and welcome back to Girl Dad. I'm Abigail Frechette.
I'm Peter Frashent. Nice look, Abby. Got a
Thank
new
you.
new
Thank you.
setup
New
there.
background for you guys.
That's different.
Trying something out for another project that may be coming soon.
Oh, very exciting.
Yeah. But we're talking about, um, I'm sorry.
I think we need to
Let's
start
start,
over.
let's start with sports time. Let's start with sports time. Do you have anything for sports time?
I thought we were gonna.
Now that the World Cup is over, like I don't know the world anymore. Like what do I do? What do I
Well,
talk
I
about?
think now that that's over, I did get my first college football email today, which I don't care
Oh
about. But
no,
but
that's
I
not,
think the big news in sports for me is the resurgent Red Sox, who
yeah.
seem to be actually making a real push for the playoffs. They made a trade, very exciting. And
Out of
you know,
nowhere, seemingly.
absolutely. And sticking with baseball, I am in first place in my fantasy baseball league, which would be a bit of a shocker to pull
Yeah.
that off. So,
Well,
uh,
congrats on that.
but anyway, we'll see how that goes. We'll keep people posted on that as we get move towards
Yeah.
September and the
Yes.
exciting finish. Uh,
And well, I have started my Premier League fantasy league or
yes, you
fantasy
invited me to
league.
join. I need to get
Yeah.
back to that and
If anyone
figure
is
out how it works.
interested in playing along with that this year or like wanting to get into Premier League stuff, I feel like now is maybe a good time to like reach out to me about that. I can give you a little bit of information before it gets like into the season. No pressure though, just
Absolutely.
if you
Absolutely.
want.
No pressure at all.
Um, but yeah, so other than that, that's what's going on in the world of sports now. Do you have any not breaking news you would like to share
Well,
with the
it's
group?
actually some of it is breaking news and some of it is not.
Oh, okay.
The sort of breaking news that people won't probably a lot of people won't have heard about, which is very sad, is Glenn Hansard. I don't know if you remember Glenn Hansard, who is the guitar player in Once and writer, I
Oh,
believe, of Once.
yeah.
He died in a motorcycle accident
No.
on Wednesday morning. Yes. So that is kind of breaking news.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and so I just wanted to share that. But it once, the great movie went on to become a very solid Broadway show, as I recall. And I believe he and his partner won the Academy Award for Best Song for Once.
And he wrote other movies, right?
I
Because
don't know that
didn't
he
he
wrote other
do,
movies. He had a role in The Commitments, but
no, no,
I
no,
don't think
but
it was
didn't,
big.
I thought the guy who did Once did like Sing Street and Begin Again,
Maybe,
or maybe it was
but it
someone
wasn't
else,
him. I
but
think maybe it was somebody who was involved. I
okay.
don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I thought that was, but never mind.
well, sad news. Anyway, and
Yeah.
in Broken Country news, I was just watching Tony Fauci being interviewed or being
Oh,
grilled on by Republican senators about his diaries, and
yeah.
it's like, come on, people, can we move on to the current
I just,
healthcare situation and measles epidemics and things that actually we could do something about rather than
yeah.
living 6 years in the past?
And I also just feel like there was so much that was handled so poorly around all of that. Like, and is still like being handled poorly about, I mean, like the mental health implications of COVID, I think is something that we still like haven't dealt with at all. I mean, I was talking to like obviously a lot more young people, like people even younger than Phoebe at our family reunion, and I felt like there's definitely stuff that like that has shifted their whole mindset about life in ways that I don't think anyone older than me is ever really thinking about. And like, I don't know. But yeah, I just think like so much of that was mishandled poorly. And to me, the reason to have these conversations and talk about it is to find a way to handle it better in the future. but that's not what to me, again, this is my perspective, like seemingly that's not what this is about. This is about like it's more like a witch hunty kind of how can we complain about something else? How can we make something else a big part of the news? And like I do think there are like questions that should be looked into and answered about the handling of COVID in various stages of it, but this is not
Now, this
the
is an attempt to lay
climate
blame.
to do that in, and it's not like if you think about because I forget who I was talking about this with, but it was like I want to say it was like a month ago, and it was like there's a lot of stuff that has been wrong since that's like stuff that's been handled wrong since Donald Trump was first elected in 2016. But there's and stuff some of that stuff is stuff that has kind of like nothing to do with him, but it was either let go because he existed and didn't care about it and it wasn't going to like gain him popularity. And then there's other stuff that like did involve him, I guess. But I don't think you can really like correct this stuff when he's still around and his
And,
attitude
and, and
towards everything
also,
is still present.
and the fact that uh, the Republican Congress still kowtows to him.
That's what I
Um,
mean, I guess. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like because I guess because even some of the stuff that like look, Joe Biden's presidency wasn't this like wonderful saving grace that I think some of us hoped it would be, but it was never going to be that way when like the culture that Donald Trump invented was still so present in not just his base, but in the actual systems of government because there were so many politicians who were still like deferential to him. So I think it'll be and the possibility of him becoming president again, which then of course he did. So it'll be I think it'll be more I don't like to use the word interesting because I feel like that makes it
is the
seem
strong.
it takes away some of the like negative consequences of this stuff, but it is I don't know what other word to use. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when the next person is elected. If it's, obviously it'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump tries to just have a full-on monarchy or what's the other version of that?
Authoritarianism.
Yeah, what are you called if a dictatorship? Yeah, that
Yeah,
could be.
but
Anyways,
that's not what we're here to talk
sorry,
about
that maybe got a
today.
little darker. But I
Sorry.
don't know. I think it's like this does feel like one of those moments where it's like a thing that you do want to happen, but it's happening at the wrong time in the wrong context, and it's just gonna make things worse. I
Right.
guess is the best way to put
Yeah.
it. Anyways, so
Not what we're here to talk about.
for some of you, you will know, and you will have been with us last weekend for our family reunion. And Dad and my uncle David, who we've had on the podcast before, have done a really cool project. They have made a documentary about the Kingsbury factory, which is Kingsbury is our family. I know it's confusing because we're Freshettes, but Kingsbury was like my grandmother's side of the
Family.
family. So it's like something our family has a lot of history with, and is really interesting. And I thought it would be fun if Dad kind of did a little breakdown of some of the stuff for us.
Well, I'm happy to do that, and but please interrupt me with questions or
Absolutely.
comments of stuff that you've picked up. This is actually the second documentary that Dave and I have done. And the first one was on Kingsbury Toys, which is where the company started.
Yeah.
Um, so Kingsbury Toys originally was Wilkins Toys, and my great grandfather, H.T. Kingsbury, bought Wilkins Toys and turned it in. Well, it stayed as Wilkins Toys for a long time and eventually became Kingsbury Toys. Um, but it was a very, this is, we're talking about the 1890s, I believe, is when he took over the company. This is in Keene, New Hampshire. And the Wilkins Toys and then Kingsbury Toys were extremely well known at the time for um, their transportation toys and replicas of different types of transportation. And it continued on in that vein for 50 plus years, going from the earliest Wilkins toys that you can find are horse-drawn farm tools like
Yeah.
wagons and plows and things like that, and went on to include the horseless carriages and early automobiles and all the way through to eventually airplanes and submarines and boats and buses and trains. And
Race cars.
race car. The some of its the most famous race cars that they did were they weren't really race cars per se. What they were replicas of cars that set the land speed record.
Mm.
And so that was the Golden Arrow and the Bluebird, I think, were the two that they did, I think, in the 30s. And they needed permission to replicate them, and they had to do them exactly the same. And they did the same thing with automobiles, Chrysler, I believe, and Chevrolet automobiles, and they were exact replicas of
Yeah.
the much larger vehicles. But these, I want to be clear that these toys were not matchbox
No,
size
no, no.
like
They're
what you
big.
have today.
They're
Um,
not Hot Wheels.
no, and like some of the fire engines that they made were a good 2 to 3 feet long. And the
I mean,
one,
you have, if anyone's watching, you have some of the models behind you, the picture drawings,
yes,
and they're that size. Like
yeah.
they're pretty true to size of those, if people can see
Yeah, those
them.
are patents that I had duplicated, which is actually a really cool art type of thing to do. Look up a patent for something that you like, and like I know it. I go to the barber shop and they have a barber's chair,
Yeah.
and it's very cool. Um, but one thing about the Kingsbury toys that they were also known, they actually had motors. They were get cranked and they would drive by themselves. The hook and ladder fire engines, the ladder you could crank it up and it could go up to 4 feet on the wall or something like that. Um, so actually, I mean, if you're really interested, I mean, you can find these toys at auctions. You can find them on eBay, and they do have value because there are a lot of them. And David is probably the world's greatest collector of Kingsbury toys.
I was
And
gonna say they have value because we're trying to get all of them back.
David has pretty much almost all of them that have ever been
Yeah.
made, I think. Um, I know that I think there were four original Wilkins farm vehicles, and I think he has three. I don't think he has the fourth one yet. He's always looking for it. But he's got a little museum in his house, not
Yeah.
so little museum in his house. It's
I was
really
gonna
cool.
say that's generous to call it little. It's so many. It's cool.
So that's kind of the toy situation. And so the toys were made originally out of cast iron
Hmm.
and pretty heavy. And one of the issues that they had when they were making them, because they were making these vehicles that would roll, and so they needed wheels. And one issue that they had was when they were making the wheels, they would drill, and cast iron is not uniform in its density. And
Hmm.
so sometimes the drill would hit a hard spot and snap. And in the late teens, 1917, 1918, HT's son, Edward, who was my grandfather, um, developed a drill that could would know would know when it was hitting a hard spot and it would
Yeah.
stop and it would just as a variable speed drill, and it saved a lot of drill heads from breaking, and it
Yeah.
became a very important tool. They used it a lot, and then they started using it for other people learned about it and they started using it for other purposes, including this was during World War One. They got a contract with the government to do to build a machine to help with something for the war effort,
Yeah.
and
I
actually
think,
that machine is in the Smithsonian.
well, I think this is something cool that like actually happens more than you would realize is that because so much like invention and technology to like build different things and now it's like all in the internet and stuff like that, that's different. But like with technology and stuff, you're gonna face the same problems in very different spaces. So like this guy's facing these problems trying to build toy cars, and he has time and smarts to figure out a solution to it, where you have at the same time like people who are building things that are maybe, not to say toy cars are not a good thing to have, but they're not a necessity. So you have people building necessities that are like, well, I don't have time to figure out how to this problem that we're having because I need to keep building and producing these items. So then you get the guy that makes the toys and he's like, "Well, I figured it out because I do have the kind of time and energy and ability to do that, and then I'm going to provide that to all the other people who are making maybe more necessitative items so that they can use it as well." I think that's something that like, because you always hear about like these weird like miracle solutions that come from like, I don't know, someone inventing something for like candy or something like that. It's like a random kind of thing, but then you realize how connected all these processes really are.
Yeah, the ability to modify something to work for what you need,
Yeah.
but you have to think about what it is that be able to have the imagination to take
Yeah.
from here to there. And so that was what my grandfather developed, and it became, and like you said, other companies had
Yeah.
needs. And so through the 20s, they just started manufacturing more and more stuff, more and more machines to help
Hmm.
people build things. I know they had National Cash Register was a client, and Singer sewing machines, and Dodge Brothers, who made Dodge cars. They all had these various needs to, so you're dealing with a machine that makes a part.
Yeah.
And so you build the machine, you ship the machine off to the company who can then use it to make the parts that they need. And so the machine tool building aspect of the company gradually grew and grew, or actually rapidly early in the 20s, and then gradually grew and grew to be a bigger company. And all of this was taking place in Keene, New Hampshire, and it was going along fine. And then the Depression hit in the early 30s. They hung on for a while, and but eventually it affected them because a big part of what of their machines was going to the fledgling automobile industry, and that industry was hit hard by the Depression,
Yeah.
and the company slowed down. But because my great grandfather just, it seems to me, I never knew him myself, but um, it seems to me that he had a very strong ethic when it came to the people who worked for him, and they did whatever they could to um, help keep these people employed, whether it
Yeah.
was giving them pay reductions, but still being able to pay them. They did that, and the company held on, and they kept going, and they got through. And FDR came in with the New Deal, and the economy turned around, and and then World War II came, and so the company continued to build and build. But World War II, um,
Can I pause you really
yeah,
quick? I'm just curious because I don't think I've ever really asked you about this before. What, like, what else was going on in Keene? Like, was Keene kind of an industry town? Like, where was the money coming from in Keene, if that makes sense? Like, was it the granite? Was it like what was
I mean, I think there were a number. I'm going to admit that I don't know the
okay,
answer to that. I could look
that's
it up
fine.
in my History of Keene book that I have up here. But I know there are other manufacturing companies that were
Yeah,
there.
okay.
And I'm just trying to think of what was there when um, I was growing up, 20 or 30 years later.
Yeah,
It was big manufacturing companies
okay.
were kind of the driving force. The railroad came through Keene, which was very important because that's how Kingsbury delivered a
Right.
lot of their machines. Um, but other than that, I'm sure, now that I think about it, I mean, I'm sure the city of Keene built a lot through farming.
Yeah.
And back in the, and
Yeah.
actually, Keene was the more I think about it, yeah, Keene was a big manufacturing town for furniture, which is something that my great great grandfather
Mm-hmm.
great 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 grandfather, HT's grandfather,
Yeah.
was big into furniture making,
Yeah.
and he was the one who helped HT buy Wilkins Toy in the first place.
Got it.
But
I
that,
mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like the kind of New England that time period was a manufacturing
yeah,
hub, I guess would be the best way to put it. So like, it's not a port city, but they do have a railroad, so that is like a
they had the
big,
railroad, and they also had the river that helped with
yeah.
milling and stuff like that.
Well,
So
that was, yeah, I was like, are most people working in like a quarry trying to get like natural resources? Because I know that's a thing in New Hampshire as well,
yeah,
but I didn't know.
no, it was more manufacturing, I
Okay.
believe. And
Okay.
anyone who wants to correct me, feel free
Yeah, please send
at
us an email.
girldadpcast@gmail.com and correct me on what was going on in Keene back there in the 20s and 30s, as Kingsbury's was growing. But then you come to World War II,
Yeah.
and so um, had Kingsbury Toy had gone away from the original cast iron into making steel toys, steel being
Mhm.
a better material with which to make the toys. But with the onset of World War II, steel was needed for the war effort. And at that point, toys, as you said, were not considered a necessity. So they weren't allowed to raise prices. They couldn't get steel. The cost of steel was going up. And eventually the toy um, company
Yeah.
closed down in
Yeah.
1945. As I recall, they sold their um, uh, models and things like that to another company who continued to make them for a short time. But that was pretty much it for Kingsbury Toys. But meanwhile, Kingsbury Machine was doing great stuff with the war effort. And then once the war ended and you moved towards the later 40s and the 50s and the automobile industry exploded,
Yeah.
Kingsbury's was right there.
Yeah.
And that really, the company really took off and continued and became much more of an international company. And then in the early 60s, your grandfather, my father, was who had married Edward's daughter, Sally.
Yeah.
My father, Hank Frechette, uh, was he had worked for the company since he had gotten back from the war himself, or relatively soon after coming back from the war. And in 1962, he became president of Kingsbury's and helped to uh, the company to continue to grow. I remember them going to China. I remember him going to Russia, and they're really trying to make it an international company, which it was doing. And um, so he was president of the company for 13 years, and then tragically passed away, had a heart attack in 1976, when the company was actually doing about as well as it ever had. And it continued doing okay for until the early 80s. And that's when just the um, things happened, uh, sort of with the national economy, and um, a lot of companies started looking internationally. Basically, I think I don't know enough about this, and I wish that I had had somebody to talk about it in the movie,
Mm,
sort of an industry specialist,
yeah.
because what my understanding is basically is that other countries uh, supported their machine tool companies to lower the cost of making those machine tools,
Yeah.
and um, the US did not do that. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the business went overseas. And so this was true of all machine tool companies. It wasn't Kingsbury failing
Oh,
because
for
of a change
sure.
in leadership. It was just a change in the industry that um, that had a decimating effect
Well,
on.
I imagine it's not different than kind of the trends of all means of production going elsewhere in a lot of ways. I think like if you look at, which I think is something that Americans are now very disgruntled about, but like that was the way things were happening. All of our like production was going elsewhere. All of our clothes were being made elsewhere all of a sudden. All of our, I don't know, like not medicine, but like what do you call it? Like
Pharmaceuticals?
yeah, and like like deodorant. What is
Yeah.
that called?
No,
Yeah, like all that stuff you is imported now, if you think like for the most part. So I think it's kind of like, and there's this whole now the movement of we want to buy American. It's like that's great. But
you have to.
unfortunately, we don't have the companies here to produce it because we send everything abroad. So all of their technologies for doing everything faster, we don't have that anymore, which
Right.
again is like a whole thing. But I think I imagine Kingsbury was just same way they were affected by the Great Depression, the war, and the automobile boom. I imagine when everything starts going overseas and the our government is okay with that, our culture is seemingly okay with that at the time, it's that's going to happen to them too. And I think it's also it does seem like they were trying for as long as possible to, you mentioned the stuff about during the Great Depression, trying to like hold on to employees as best as possible to continue to like have something there. I imagine a company that is trying to do that, have that mindset, even while all this is happening, sometimes in that circumstance, you lose out a little bit because instead of being able to just sell abroad, you just you're trying to hold on for too long, and by the time you're ready to like be like, okay, we can't do this anymore, there's no one to sell to anymore because everyone they've already bought
Right.
everything else kind of would be my assumption of how that kind of worked.
That's definitely part of it. And the other part of it, from what I gather from talking to the people who worked there, um, was that Kingsbury was a victim of its own success in that
Mm.
the machines were too good. And
Oh
so
yeah, that was in the
um,
documentary, yeah.
the so they had built these machines that instead of lasting 10 years, lasted 50 years.
Yeah.
And as long as the company that had the machine still needed it to do the same thing, the machine just kept going and going and
Yeah.
going. There's still, I believe, there are still machines, Kingsbury machines, at a airbag plant in New Mexico or Arizona that they're still
Yeah.
going, and they've
Well, it's
probably
the
had it
opposite. I feel like that's kind of, if you really think about it, like that's the peak of capitalism, right? Like you're making a really good product for a good price, and there's this kind of like the creativity that went into it, the entrepreneurship, all of that stuff is great. That's the peak of it. And now we're in this like fall off of all that where you've got every company charging up the wazoo for everything, but also nothing's built to last. I mean, Apple doesn't make their phones are designed to only be kept for 2 to 3 years because it's like after a while they start doing things to the software. It's like, and it's intentional that they're like making a
There's nothing
phone
wrong with the
product.
phone. They're just changing how it works so that
Exactly.
you have to get a new one.
They're making their own product worse so that you have to continue to buy their
Correct.
products.
Correct.
Where that's not, and if you look at like if you were to compare in my mind like the original Kingsbury manufacturing tools to the ones that were like their final products that they were like the ones you're talking about lasting for years and years and years, I imagine there would be big differences between every new version of the product that are like such big improvements that lead you to making this perfect product that now you can improve and people don't need you to because they can still use that one. Where if you look at the difference between the first iPhone and the iPhone we have today, there's such small differences along the way, maybe a couple big jumps if you really look at it, but it's they don't because they're not trying to make the product better. They're trying to make you buy a new
Right.
one.
Right.
It's a different concept, kind of.
Yeah, for sure.
But I can
Uh,
imagine, obviously, that that's not the point of running a business. That's the point of making a good product. Those are
yeah.
different things. Those don't always coincide.
So anyway, Kingsbury, they hung on through into the 90s. There was a big thing because the industry was failing.
Hmm.
They and the people that worked there, there's a line in the movie about people thinking that Kingsbury was a womb to tomb company, meaning you got your first job out of high school, maybe, and you
Yeah.
stayed there until you were 65.
Yeah.
And and people did very well doing that. And in the 90s, that wasn't working anymore. And they
Yeah.
had layoffs. And so I think the workers got frustrated. And so the unions came in and tried to um, get into the shop, and eventually they succeeded in doing that. And but it was kind of a last ditch effort, I think, to save the company. And the company eventually was sold out of the family in the late 90s, I think. And but the woman who bought it had the same problems that there was no change in the industry.
Yeah.
And so she eventually filed for bankruptcy, and the name and reputation were sold and to a
Mhm.
company in Rochester, New York, and they kept it going for a little while, and then it finally closed. Uh,
Yeah.
So one cool thing was that my grandfather, E.J. Kingsbury, uh, went into the Machine Tool Hall of Fame in 1992. Who knew there was such a thing?
Amazing.
And I believe it's in Vermont somewhere.
Of course it is.
I looked it up online, and
We should go someday.
we should go someday. I can't remember where it is because I do not believe it is a standalone museum.
No, I imagine
I,
not.
I think it's inside some company or something. But still kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it
so
was, I think there was something watching the documentary and kind of, you know, I think that womb to tomb thing for sure was like, that's one of those like, um, I don't know the right, like it's like a nostalgia thing of like, why doesn't that exist anymore? And I think, of course, there's people who can fight against whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. I do think there were good things to it. Some of them were that, like, and this was just a normal thing before, was like caring about your employees, and therefore, in return, your employees care about your company. And I do think it's like there's kind of this thing where it's almost because we had people in charge of businesses that at one point did care about their employees. There was kind of, it seems like, at least again to me, like there was not this need as much for unions per se, for regulations upon employee stuff. And obviously there's exceptions, but I think because of that, it's kind of like a double-edged sword where you expect that everyone who's going to have a company from then on is going to have these values of caring about their employees. And when they don't, that's when you get problems, kind of. And I think it's interesting to compare like what the kind of benefits and community that the people in the movie were talking about, or the documentary were talking about in the past of Kingsbury, and then to compare like the benefits and community of a lot of like modern day companies, and that like it's it's not necessarily that the benefits or community were that different, but they were appreciated differently because I think they weren't seen as something to like throw on the employees to make them feel better about their job, which is kind of the attitude I think a lot of people have today. It was more, no, we actually appreciate you and we know you're doing a great job because the general environment of the workplace was better. I don't know if I'm making like a lot of sense here, but I
hello.
just well, I feel like because they talk about how like they would have these community barbecues and a lot of your friends would work in the same place as you and all that stuff. I don't feel like that people still do community barbecues and stuff. I think the difference is now it feels like if you're doing a company barbecue or a company happy hour or something like that, it feels like an obligation the company has to do that thing for you because of how shitty working is now. Where I think in the past, you could enjoy your job. Even if it
Right.
wasn't like this, like, do what you love, love what you do, you could enjoy medial jobs a lot more because you were getting paid a livable wage. It wasn't, you weren't overworked. So then those community events feel more genuine, feel more like this is an appreciative thing. We love that you guys are a part of this community, a part of this organization. I don't know, maybe I'm having too much of like a rose-colored glasses perspective on the history, but I do feel like people used to enjoy work get-togethers in a way that I think they now look at them very pessimistically. And I think that's the reason why, if
And
that makes
I don't
sense.
disagree with you, and I've seen it at other places too. And I think you're right. I think that um, if the company legitimately cares about its people, the people will legitimately care about the company,
Hmm.
and they won't. But the company has to step up and
Absolutely.
and be there. And
Yeah. It's on the
um,
company first.
right,
And
absolutely.
then, and like, that's why I say, like, it. unions are a reaction to a bad company environment for the
Right.
most part in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there was a lot of probably also issues with the unionization of a company at Kingsbury compared to other places because there was this, because of the fact that there had been these employees that have been there forever and had experienced the really good aspects of Kingsbury. And then you have younger employees coming in who haven't gotten to experience that because they've only been there while it's on the decline. I could see why those younger people are like, we need a union to protect ourselves. And I can see why those older people are like, no, we've been loyal to this company for so long. Like maybe my grandfather worked here during the Depression. I've seen what they do even in the bad times. But it's like, that's not necessarily the same people that are running the ship that were
Well,
running
it's
the ship back then.
one
And how
interesting
much can you fight against industry patterns at the end of the day?
one interesting thing that that came up in the movie, I think, that we haven't really talked about that much was along those lines. When you think about one of the reasons that you don't have those community companies as much anymore is that the company may start in a community, but
Mm,
then get sold
yeah,
and to a much bigger company. And even if you
globalization,
keep the same leadership at the local level, you're still kowtowing a little bit to that larger company.
for sure.
And when my father died, and my mother stepped in as, I think, maybe chairman of the board or something like that,
Yeah,
and was definitely involved in um, what was more involved in the daily running of the company. She and whoever else was involved with it, the leadership decided that we are not going to do that. They could have sold at that point, and they
right.
said, no, this is a local company. We want this to stay a local company, and that's
Yeah,
what they did. Could they have made a lot more money um, had they sold it? Maybe. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of people did very well from the company anyway. So,
right.
I think trying to stay loyal to the people who had been loyal to them
Yeah,
is what they went for. And this is before the industry itself started to fail. So,
yeah. Well, I think it's also, we see now that there are a lot of negative effects to the globalization that was happening in that time period. So it's like, I do think, again, it's like, it depends because I think their industry is a little bit different in the fact that what we were talking about with making such a good product. And then also, you know, we've moved into different industries being more important and more vital to society. But I do think there's almost this feeling that if they were able to hold on for like 10 more years almost, maybe they could have gotten to this point where there's a lot of companies now who are succeeding because we want American industry to grow. We want local companies to grow. We want to move away from globalization. Again, I'm not sure based on the products Kingsbury was selling that this would have worked for them, but I think just their model of a company would have been something that, and like we said before, they changed what they did. They started selling toys and then they made tools. They could have changed to a different tool
well, I mean,
manufacturing
you
system
look
or
at
something, but
the types of tools that they were making and the infinitesimal measurements that they had
yeah,
on and how specific they were, could they have come up with machines to help make iPhones and
absolutely.
bring those to back to this country?
Exactly. But
Maybe, who
that's
knows?
the thing is like all those companies that were like Kingsbury, they're all gone from here now
Right.
because this is not the only one by any means. So it's like
And the
And you
companies that are
can't
doing
really
that,
bring them back
and the
because
companies that are doing that in China are being subsidized by the government, and that is
exactly.
not happening here.
So you can't, those companies that we lost during this globalization, as much as there's this effort now of, and I'm going to use this term, but I don't mean it in all the ways it's being used currently, but this kind of America first in terms of product buying and trying to buy local and all this stuff. You can only do that with so many products. Yeah, you can buy that, you can buy some groceries locally because there's still farms that exist here, but you can't do that with an iPhone. You can't buy technology. You can't really, even like clothing. We don't make a lot of our own clothing. So it's
Right?
like this this time period when this was happening, when Kingsbury closed down, I think it's an interesting thing to look at and be like, it sucks that these companies all closed because we could really use them now. Like it would be great if, because like I said, they could take on some of these kind of international projects that we don't, but we just don't have manufacturers like that here anymore. Um, it's a
So yeah.
very, sorry.
No, I was just going to say if people want to learn more, they can. I'm going to put
Yeah,
the links to both movies in the show notes, so you can
they're
watch the
very fun
Kingsbury
to
Toy
watch.
movie and the Kingsbury Machine movie.
Yeah, and they're not super long, so like, but it is one of those. I feel like it's fun to watch documentaries like that too because obviously I have a personal connection. I know like all the names and stuff, but I do think it's fun to watch stuff like that. Like that's what I watch on YouTube a lot of the time. It's just like this random company that had this like kind of, because it's a case study, right? It's you're witnessing history through a very specific lens, but you're seeing the real effects on individuals, you're seeing the real effects on communities, on a state, and then like that happens at every level, kind of, right? Which I think is a sometimes a more fun way to learn history because you get real feelings, real perspectives. But yeah, I highly recommend if anyone is interested in watching it. And both of them.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about with the Kingsbury factory related things?
No, I'm ready to move on to my smile of the week.
Okay.
Do you have one?
I do, but I'll let you go
No,
first.
you go first.
Okay. Well, I think my smile of the week was Olive reunion. I feel like this was a great reunion, a little smaller. We missed some people, but I got to hang out with some of my oh frick, I memorized what this was called and now I forgot what it is. Your cousin's kids. What are your cousin's kids?
Your cousin's once removed.
Okay, I got to hang out with some of them, which was nice to chit chat with them, get to know them a little bit better as they become young adults. And yeah, I had a great time. I had a lot of
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
My
What about you?
smile, also from reunion, but this is a very
Oh,
specific
you have a specific moment.
moment
Okay.
that made me smile.
Mm.
I will refrain from using names, but I will say that you know on the last night that we were there, you and I were dancing outside, and
Mm.
um, one of my great nephews came out and danced with us, and then said he was going to the bathroom, and
Oh my God.
he didn't come back. And so, and then the wedding ended, and so
Like
we,
immediately after he left.
yeah, so we wondered where he was. So I texted his father, my nephew, and asked where he was, and if he knew where he was, and explained
Yeah.
what had happened. And he responded to me, "Oh yes, we know where he is. It's all good." And so I went back inside, and then I went there. There's always a big poker game going on, and I went to see how that was going. And my nephew was there, and I asked him something about my great nephew and where he was or whatever, and he goes,
Oh, I don't
"Well,
know.
I don't know. I My daughter has my phone." So I learned that his his daughter was the one who was texting me from his phone, and I asked if that was her, and she said, "Yes, I was trying to sound like him." I guess I wasn't. So that made me laugh because yes, my great nephew was fine. Everybody was
Everyone
fine.
was fine. Brought him to bed a little
Um,
bit later.
and so yes, I'm keeping that conversation for a while.
That was really funny.
That was a good smile.
I actually have one more I would like to share.
Okay.
That's a little more specific. So on Friday night, we play bingo, and Dad may have been a little overserved, but I left you guys. You left. You disappeared
Which
basically.
was good
And
for
then
me.
and then mom went to go hang out with some other people and I went to hang out with other people. And then we kind of were like, "Where's Dad?" We were in the room, which was good, but mom walked in and didn't see that you were in the room because there was basically their room had like a couch in it, and the back of the couch is to the door. So I get a photo of Dad curled up on the small couch. There's a bed. He could have been in the bed, but no, he's curled up on the small couch with his phone next to his ear. And he's listening to the Red Sox game. And mom was
Although
so,
I think by that time, I think the game was probably over,
yeah,
but
you just
I was out at that point.
but yeah, so I received that photo the next morning from Phoebe, who was not at reunion. And I was very confused. She said, "Yeah, mom and I were on the phone and she sent me this is what I'm looking at right now." But that was really funny. And
I'm glad that could make you smile.
I wish I could show you guys this picture because my favorite part, which is something that no one's really noticed, is that Dad is it's a it's a little bit bigger than a love seat. So it's not a big couch, but it's bigger than two cushions. Or it's two big cushions, I guess is the right way to put it. And the arms are low. So realistically, you would put your head on the arm, and like that would be the most comfortable way to lay, especially if you're over 6 feet tall laying on this couch. Dad's head is like a foot away from the arm, and then his legs are curled up like between. So there's so much room for you on that couch that you're not utilizing. And I think that's one of the funniest parts of the photo that nobody else has like brought up is why are you like starting your head in the middle of the couch?
So
Anyways, it's really
we
great. Really
So we
happy.
both have that photo, and if you'd like to see it, just reach out to us at
Send us an
girldadpcast at
email.
gmail.com, and we will be happy to send you a copy. And you
Oh,
can get all of the details from my feet to my phone.
oh my God, so
So,
funny.
yep,
Yeah,
it's over now. Thank God.
that was great.
It's a tough night,
Yeah.
but
Weekend,
a great bingo game.
good bingo game, fun trivia afterwards. Um, yeah, learned a
Yeah,
lot about
very
my
nice.
cousins and family that I didn't know.
Very
We
exciting.
have a mandolin player in the family.
Yeah, very nice.
All right. Well, this has been fun to chit chat about history, family, podcasts.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is it.
another announcement just because we know you guys as fans of our podcast are fans of family. And there's a re-release of The Fast and the Furious
Uh,
coming to theaters this odd this August. And Dad and I will be going, possibly separately, but at the same time. But we will be going because
it's family.
family. Anyways,
Never seen it in the theater,
uh,
so
I know
that'll be
we've seen
fun.
the later ones in theaters,
Yeah,
but not the first one. Could
yeah.
be fun. Just saying. Should we
You
make
got
it
it.
an event? Should we do like a group movie
Well,
trip, a
we'll
podcast
discuss.
sponsored?
But we
If you're
also
interested in that, let us know.
we also along the lines of the movies, we can both highly recommend The Odyssey.
Oh, yes.
We thought it was
Absolutely.
very good. And it
Really
doesn't seem
great.
as long as it is.
No, we were both exhausted because obviously we've talked to you a
Coming
little bit
off a
about our
reunion and
antics.
sleeping on couches.
Yes, and we both sat awake for a 3-hour movie. So,
Yep.
you know. All right. Well, we will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening. You can email us at girldadpcast@gmail.com. Stay tuned for some new projects from us coming soon. Go check out Dad's documentaries. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are listening, do whatever you're supposed to do on whatever app you're doing it on. Anyways, on that note, we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye, Dad.
Bye, girl. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, rate us, and leave a review.